Seeing wolf is a pretty exotic experience for most of us. Wolves are pretty wary of humans, at least as far as I know. They usually prefer the deep woods and the cover of darkness to move and hunt. But in the past few years, there have been an increasing number of wolf sightings along roads and highways, and they're being seen even closer to the edge of larger cities like Thunder Bay. Now, stories of wolves pursuing humans are relatively rare, at least historically. But this morning, our outdoor columnist Gord Ellis will share a wolf encounter that will give anyone some pause for thought. Gord's, as always, in the studio. Good morning, Gord.
Good morning, Jeff.
So whenever I hear about wolves pursuing people, I kind of get some goosebumps.
Yeah, who wouldn't?
Yeah,
right?
I can put myself in that situation. I've usually seen them at a distance, which is just how I want to
Out
see
the window.
them. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Happy about that. What's it like, though, I guess, to have a wolf that close to you?
Well, I mean, I've been close to wolves in hunting situations. I think our natural reaction as humans is, and it probably goes way back in our human DNA. It's a pretty visceral reaction. And I expect that at one time our ancestors were likely potential food for wolves.
Made sense.
But the onset of firearms and trapping and other technology, over time played a role in wolves are pretty wary of people generally. So when you hear a story like you're going to hear in just a minute, it gives your brain a little reset about that, though.
Okay, so let's get right to it. Who is the person at the center of this story?
Well, Hilary Petrus is a name some listeners might recognize. He's a longtime chiropractor in Thunder Bay who's now retired, outdoorsman, angler, fitness aficionado. But I recently heard through the grapevine that Hilary had a story he wanted to share with me and that it involved a wolf. So always interested in those kind of stories. Mm-hmm. So earlier this week, I gave him a call. Now, he has a camp on Lake Superior, and this is where this incident occurred, basically. And let me tell you, Jeff, it was much more of a story than I expected. Here is Hilary Petrus and his story of his brush with a wolf, which happened just over a week ago.
Well, let me give you a little bit of background first. Our camp is located east of Nipigon on Lake Superior, just off of Highway 17 near the Jack Pine River. Every couple of days, as part of my exercise routine, I ride my bike from my camp to the highway, then down across the Jack Pine River, then up and down the steep 2-kilometer hill that ends down by Dublin Creek, and then I turn around and come back again. Well, like I say, about 6 days ago, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I was coasting down the backside of the hill toward Dublin Creek. Now, I'm going about 40 kilometers an hour when, out of the corner of my eye to the left, I noticed something coming out from the shoulder of the road, coming across right toward me. And I look over, and here's a big timber wolf coming right at my bike. But at the speed I was going, it ended up passing behind my rear tire by a few feet. Now, my first reaction was, that was pretty cool, but something didn't feel right, and I said to myself, geez, I don't know if that wolf was not running by me, but coming at me. But I quickly wrote that off in my head and convinced myself that we were just, two ships in the night that came close to each other sort of thing, eh? So anyways, about 200 yards further is my turnaround point. And now I'm coming back up the hill at a much slower speed. I'm only doing like 5 to 8 kilometers an hour as a slow jogger could keep up with me. So, of course, I'm approaching the spot where I last saw the wolf go across the shoulder of the road. And I look over at the shoulder, and here's the wolf crouched down behind a guardrail like a cat, watching me. So my eyes are wide open, like, what is going on here? So when I get parallel to the wolf, it bolts across the highway right at me. And just before it gets to me, it peels off and goes behind me once again. Well, needless to say, I'm now pedaling as hard as I can going up this hill, but I'm still going very slow, and I look behind me, and here's the wolf following me. It's staying about 20 feet behind me, not backing down at all. Well, I keep pedaling and looking back and pedaling and looking back, and it's still there. So now, it's followed me for at least 500 meters up that climb. And of course, Murphy's Law, there isn't a vehicle anywhere. But finally, I hear a vehicle approaching from the rear. This construction worker in a half-ton pulls up right alongside me, rolls down his passenger window, and yells over to me. He says, "Do you realize what's following you?" Partly out of breath, I say, "Yeah, but I think I'm gaining on it." And then he says to me, "Do you need any help?" And I tell him, "Let's stop and have a look." So, well, I turn around, and now the wolf is about 75 feet away, and it's pretty nervous with the truck being there, and finally decides, I've had enough of this, and calls it quits and heads back into the bush. So that's the gist of the story. I worked in the bush for many years, and I've seen many wolves, but this encounter was unique. I mean, this wolf first challenged me a couple times going down that hill to see what I would do. It wanted to see whether I was going to run or I was going to fight it. And, and having assessed the situation, in typical wolf behavior, it decided that I was fair game and started to stalk me in order to, wear me down, going up the hill sort of thing. But, so I thought it was important to tell your listeners this story because had I been a child or someone's pet, the outcome, could have been very different, I think you'll agree with me, Gord, that, the behavior of some black bears with humans today is far different from the black bear of yesteryear, and from my experience last week, I'd have to include some wolves in that equation as well.
Hillary, can you give us an idea of the size of this wolf?
It was a full-grown timber wolf. I've seen many. It looked fine. There was no mange. If anything, it was a little lean, but, how many times do you see a fat wolf? It was a typical timber wolf.
That's a very disconcerting story.
Yeah. It blew me away, like on the open highway. And to come, I could live with it if I was walking down the highway. Maybe it would kind of challenge me a bit and run away. But I'm on a bicycle, and it's coming after me, and it's not letting down. Like I say, it's scary because, boy, if I was a kid, it could have been all over. So, and I want to get the story out because, within, an easy walk for this wolf, there's dozens of camps around here, and there's, of course, at this time of the year, there's grandchildren, kids playing all over the place, and so, who knows? It's strange but true.
Well, that was Hillary Petrus. He has a cottage east of Nipigon on Lake Superior, and this happened just over a week ago. Very unusual and a very alarming experience with a wolf on Highway 17.
Yeah, it's not like he followed him for 10 feet and ran into the bush. This was
500 meters.
Quite a trot. It seems a little uncharacteristic of wolves, though, Gord. So have you heard of anything similar like this before?
Rarely, but actually several years ago, Jeff, I did a column about a mountain biker who was pursued by a wolf. Quite another hair-raising story. The odd thing about that story is it took place only a few kilometers away from this. It was actually near the Gravel River area, which is just down the road from where this occurred. Could be pure coincidence. Perhaps not, but it's kind of an interesting thing to note.
Hillary Petrus, is he riding his bike on the highway again?
He is a brave man, and he is back there. He's had no more problems. Presumably it was a one-off experience, a fluke. But one thing that he did say to me when we were chatting after the interview was that, we have, every once in a while, we've had these really odd sort of disappearances along the highway. And one that he actually mentioned was the young woman who was jogging to Rainbow Falls a few years ago.
I remember
Vanished
that.
Without a trace,
yes.
Right? Still don't know what happened to her. When you hear stories like this, it just gives you pause for thought. About, there's no way you can ever control what wild animals do. They're wild animals. But it is this is very unusual, but it makes you think.
Yeah, for sure. It also makes you wonder how many other people have had nerve-wracking
right.
wolf encounters and they just don't really say much about it.
And I think they do happen. Wolf attacks are rare historically, not unheard of. I've been in a situation where I've been calling moose in the fall, for instance, and had wolves answer back, and I've heard other people talk about having wolf packs move in on them. So these things do happen. Normally they end, with a happy ending, but just quite the story.
Gord, thanks for this.
You're welcome.
And thanks for 4 great outdoor columns.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, Gord Ellis here. This is my last week on Superior Morning, so a big thanks to Gord, our outdoor columnist. He's here every Thursday at this time. You can find him on Facebook, Twitter @Gord Ellis, or through his website, gordellis.com.